Now, Sir Keir Starmer has said that homes must have a higher priority than nature and the environment, as ministers outlined reforms that could allow a vast amount of building on England's green belt. A shake-up of planning rules revealed on Thursday means that councils have been given mandatory targets to deliver a total of 370,000 homes a year. So, is building on some of our most beautiful countryside worth it to tackle the housing crisis? Let's get the views of housing expert and broadcaster Charlie Lamdin. Charlie, thank you for joining us. Do you support this move by the Labour government to build on the green belt?
It's completely unnecessary, actually. It's very important for people to understand that the shortage of homes that we have at the moment, which is very acute, especially in some built-up areas, is not because there aren't enough homes. So according to the ONS's own website, England and Wales alone have 1.6 million currently unoccupied dwellings. And only 10% of those are second homes. So that's 1.5 million that actually meets the target that they want. 1.5 million unoccupied dwellings. These are long-term vacant dwellings. So that's the first thing that would be a much easier way to target to free up some desperately needed housing accommodation. Secondly, there's an awful lot of people at the higher end of the market in larger houses who would move if it weren't for stamp duty. So there's an enormous amount of unused occupancy in houses, which would get freed up very quickly. There are people who would like to downsize, but stamp duty is just eye-watering. And so scrapping stamp duty would be a second shot in the arm for the housing crisis. It would help very quickly. And thirdly, and actually this is where the housing crisis is most acute in the social sector, right? So what the government needs to do, and Angela Rayner has not been clear about this yet, is that they need to actually focus not on just building homes, they need to build social homes. The government needs to build and own its own social housing stock and stop relying on the private rented sector to meet its obligations for two reasons. First of all, that forces prices in the private rented sector up. And if you took the social housing obligations off the private renter sector, it would ease rents. And secondly, there is an enormous £1.7 billion a year temporary accommodation bill being paid by the taxpayer that is putting some councils into bankruptcy. And that money, if it was spent on building social homes specifically, to meet the government's own housing obligations, rather than spending £1.7 billion giving it to landlords and bed and breakfast owners and hotel owners, then that would be a much better long-term solution and better for the taxpayer as well. So
yeah. I don't want to interrupt you, but I wanted to ask you, I mean, all that makes a lot of sense. At the risk of making it political, to what extent is the current rate of legal net migration into the country a problem?
Well, I mean, the problem is the total population, right? Whether it's coming from us having babies, which we're not doing, or whether it's coming from very high levels of immigration, which is currently happening. The problem is the total, right? But still, so whether or not legal migration is brought down, whether or not illegal migration is stopped, that's obviously going to have a massive bearing on the requirements for housing going forward. But in the absence of any action being taken on that, people still need the housing crisis solved now. Yeah. So, and there are ways to do that. But changing planning permission and changing planning rules and starting new builds, even if it worked, which it won't, they won't meet their targets and they won't get the planning reforms that they want. We wouldn't start to see the benefits of that for at least 5 to 10 years. So this is all total posturing. And what Angela Rayner needs to say is, we are taking an emergency footing for building social homes to meet the government's own social housing obligations. And if she does that, they don't need to build on the green belt at all.
If only you were the housing minister, Charlie. Do join us again soon. An illuminating conversation. Your reaction, please. gbnews.com/you'll say, building on the green belt, yes or no. But next up, as we get ready for some festive TV entertainment, I'll be